in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's story. Nathan Pierce stood at his office window, 40 stories above Seattle's bustling financial district. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across his desk, where the latest prototype of Pierce Innovations' revolutionary cardiac monitoring device lay. His fingers traced the smooth edges of the device that promised to revolutionize early heart attack detection. A soft buzz from his phone interrupted his thoughts. Claire's message lit up the screen. "Meet me at La Maison Rouge at 7. Remember our first date there? Time to celebrate something special." 18 years of memories. Nathan's steel-gray eyes narrowed slightly. Something in the phrasing felt off. Claire had been distant lately, always traveling for work with her consulting firm. Their conversations had become perfunctory, lacking the warmth they once shared. Still, 18 years of marriage had taught him to read between the lines. This wasn't just about anniversary nostalgia. "Jennifer," he called to his assistant through the intercom. "Clear my evening schedule." "Already done, Mr. Pierce. And the board meeting for tomorrow's expansion plan is confirmed. Should I have the financial projections ready?" "No need." James said he'd handle the presentation. Nathan's jaw tightened imperceptibly at mentioning his business partner. Something had been nagging at him about James Harrison's recent behavior, subtle changes in his demeanor, closed-door phone calls, missing documentation from their overseas subsidiaries. On his way out, Nathan stopped at Winston and Gray Florists. "The usual, Mr. Pierce?" Thomas, the elderly owner, reached for the premium roses. "Claire's favorites. Some things shouldn't change." Nathan paid, remembering how Claire's eyes had lit up when he'd brought her these same roses on their first date at La Maison Rouge. Back then, he'd been a struggling entrepreneur with big dreams, and she'd been a brilliant economics major who believed in his vision. The restaurant hadn't changed much in 18 years. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over cream-colored walls, and the soft murmur of conversation mixed with gentle piano music. The maitre d' recognized him immediately. "Mr. Pierce, welcome back. Your wife is already seated." He hesitated slightly. "With another gentleman." Nathan's measured stride didn't falter as he approached the table, but his grip on the roses tightened when he saw James Harrison sitting entirely too close to Claire, their heads bent together in intimate conversation. Claire looked up, her perfectly painted red lips curving into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Darling, you're right on time." She wore the diamond necklace Nathan had given her for their 15th anniversary, but somehow it looked different on her now, cold, like armor rather than adornment. James didn't bother standing, just raised his whiskey glass in a mock salute. "Nathan, join us for this special occasion." The roses fell forgotten to an empty chair as Nathan noticed the thick manila envelope on the table. Years of high-stakes business negotiations had taught him to maintain composure in any situation. He pulled out a chair, his movements deliberate and controlled. "Quite the setup you have here." His voice carried no emotion. "I assume that envelope explains why my business partner is dining with my wife?" Claire's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. "Always so perceptive. That's what I admired about you, darling." She slid the envelope across the crisp white tablecloth. Though apparently not perceptive enough, Nathan opened the envelope, methodically reviewing each document. The waiter approached, but a sharp gesture from Nathan sent him retreating. The only sound was the rustle of papers and the continuing piano melody, now seeming discordant and mocking. "Impressive," he finally said, looking up at Claire. "How long have you been planning this?" "Planning?" Claire sipped her wine, an expensive Bordeaux that Nathan recognized from their cellar at home. "Oh, this isn't just planning. This is years of careful execution." "Show him the best part, James." James pulled out another document with flourish. "Your recent expansion plan? Every bank rejected your loan applications because they saw some adjusted numbers." His smirk grew wider. "You're not just losing the company, Nathan. You're bankrupt. Don't forget to tell him about us, dear," James added, placing his hand over Claire's. "Oh yes." Claire's smile turned predatory. "James and I have been together for 3 years. He knows how to appreciate a woman with business acumen. All those late nights at the office? We weren't always working on spreadsheets." Nathan sat back, studying them both. Where others might see shock or devastation on his face, there was only cold calculation. Every piece was falling into place. The late-night calls Claire claimed were work emergencies, James's insistence on handling all investor relations, the mysterious withdrawals from company accounts that accounting couldn't explain. 3 years, Nathan repeated softly. Around the time you suggested James should take over our European expansion, he needed full access to our international accounts. Nathan continued, his voice steady. And you, Claire, needed someone on the inside. Tell me, was I always the target? Or did James pick me out for you? Claire's smile faltered slightly at his calm demeanor. Does it matter? Sign the transfer documents, and we can all move on civilly. You've lost, Nathan. Accept it gracefully. Before I sign, Nathan pulled out a pin, his signet ring catching the light. I'm curious about one thing. The Thompson merger last year, that was when you started moving significant shares through your shell companies, wasn't it? James shifted uncomfortably. Just sign the damn papers, Nathan. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. You're right. Why drag this out? Nathan's pen moved across the paper, his signature as strong and confident as ever. I assume my key card will be deactivated by morning? Sooner, Claire said, gathering the documents. You know, I almost feel bad about this. You did build something impressive. We'll take good care of P0lice Innovations. I'm sure you will. Nathan stood, straightening his tie. Enjoy your dinner. The 82 Bordeaux pairs well with betrayal, I hear. He walked out of La Maison Rouge, past the concerned glances of the staff who'd known him for years. The night air hit his face, but he didn't flinch. Instead, he pulled out his phone and sent a single text. It's done. They took the bait. Behind him, through the restaurant's window, Claire and James clinked glasses, celebrating their victory. They didn't notice the distinguished-looking man at the bar who'd been nursing the same drink all evening, or the woman dining alone who'd barely touched her food while typing constantly on her laptop. Nathan's driver, Robert, opened the car door. Home, sir? No. Nathan checked his watch. Take me to the office. I have some calls to make. Rough night? Robert had been with Nathan for 15 years and knew his moods well. Just the opposite. Nathan's reflection in the car window showed no sign of a man who just lost everything. Some people are so focused on winning, they forget to check if they're playing the right game. As the car pulled away, Nathan removed his wedding ring, studying it in the passing streetlights before placing it in his pocket. There would be time for sentiment later. Right now, he had work to do. In the restaurant, Claire was already on the phone with their offshore account manager, her voice thick with triumph. Everything's proceeding as planned. Start the transfers tonight. James watched her with admiration and a touch of fear. He'd seen what happened to people who underestimated Claire P0lice, soon to be Claire Harrison. At least, that was the plan they discussed. Somehow, looking at her now, he wondered if he really knew her at all. The waiter brought their dessert, a chocolate souffle ordered to celebrate. Compliments of Mr. P0lice, he said quietly. He called it in this morning. Claire's hand froze halfway to her wine glass. This morning? For a moment, doubt crept into her perfect plan. She pushed it aside, reminding herself that Nathan had always been sentimental. That's what made him such an easy target. To us, James raised his glass, pushing away his own flicker of unease. And to P0lice Innovations' bright future. Outside, a light rain began to fall on Seattle streets, washing away the last traces of a marriage built on lies and a partnership founded on betrayal. But in his office high above the city, Nathan P0lice was just beginning his real work. The night was still young, and he had 18 years of trust to repay with interest. The cleaning staff noticed him there well past midnight, his office light a lone beacon in the darkened building. If any of them thought it strange to see the CEO working so late, they didn't mention it. They'd grown used to his dedication over the years. What they didn't see was his phone conversation, conducted in hushed tones near the window. Everything recorded? A woman's voice responded, crystal clear, Mr. P0lice. Both video and audio from multiple angles. Agent Rodriguez says it's better than they hoped for. Good. Nathan watched the city lights below, each one representing a life untouched by the kind of betrayal he'd experienced. Keep monitoring their communications. They'll be moving quickly now. Sir? The woman hesitated. I'm sorry about everything. Don't be, Sarah. Some things need to break before they can be rebuilt properly. He ended the call and turned back to his desk, where the prototype still sat, a reminder of what he'd built and what he would protect. Tomorrow, Claire and James would begin dismantling his life's work, thinking they'd won. They didn't realize they were actually helping him set a trap years in the making. Nathan allowed himself a small smile as he remembered Claire's words. Time to see who really built P0lice Innovations. Indeed it was. The roses lay forgotten on the restaurant chair, their deep red petals a stark contrast to the white linen. Like everything else about this night, they weren't what they appeared to be. Nathan had chosen them not for romance, but as a marker helping the surveillance team identify his table from a distance. In their penthouse apartment, Claire was packing an overnight bag, her movements efficient and purposeful. She picked up a framed photo from their wedding day, studied it for a moment, then dropped it in the trash. The glass cracked, splintering across Nathan's smiling face. Sentimental fool, she murmured. But her hand shook slightly as she zipped the bag. 18 years was a long time to play a role, even for someone as skilled as she was. Part of her had almost grown comfortable in the life she'd built with Nathan. Almost. But comfort didn't build empires. Looking out at the same city view Nathan had observed earlier, she saw not beauty but opportunity. Seattle had been a stepping stone, nothing more. By this time next week, she and James would be restructuring P0lice Innovations, stripping it for parts before moving on to their next target. She didn't know that 20 floors below, in a nondescript apartment filled with surveillance equipment, Sarah Chen was already unraveling the threads of her carefully constructed plan. The former FBI forensic accountant had spent 6 months building a case, and tonight's confession was the final piece she needed. In his private office at P0lice Innovations, Nathan opened his wall safe and removed a thick file, one that even Claire didn't know existed. Inside were photographs, bank statements, and detailed reports tracking his wife's activities over the past year. He'd learned long ago that trust was good, but verification was better. The night stretched on, each player moving their pieces into position for the next day's game. But that would be another act, with its own revelations and consequences. For now, the setup was complete, the trap was set, and the players had shown their hands. Nathan P0lice, the man they thought they'd destroyed, sat in his office and waited for dawn. He'd built his company from nothing once before. If necessary, he could do it again. But first, he had a debt to settle, not with money, but with justice. The roses wilted in the empty restaurant, their perfume fading into the night air. Like the marriage they represented, they had been nothing but a prop in an elaborate performance. But unlike Claire's calculated betrayal, Nathan's performance was far from over. The real show was about to begin. Sarah Chen sat in her darkened office, surrounded by monitors displaying surveillance feeds from La Maison Rouge. 6 months of meticulous investigation had led to this moment. As P0lice Innovations head of security, few knew her real background as an FBI forensic accountant, exactly as Nathan had planned. Target is moving. Her earpiece crackled. Mrs. P0lice just sent a secure message to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard, intercepting the encrypted communication. Got it. Start recording all network traffic from their devices. Through the restaurant's cameras, she watched Nathan maintain his composure as Claire and James gloated over their apparent victory. Most men would have crumbled seeing their life's work stolen by their wife and best friend. But Nathan P0lice wasn't most men. 6 months earlier, Ms. Chen, Nathan had said during their first meeting, "I need someone who can follow money trails that don't want to be followed." Sarah remembered studying him across his desk, noting his careful choice of words. "You suspect internal fraud? I suspect something far more elaborate." He'd slid a folder across his desk. "These are discrepancies in our international accounts. Small enough to miss individually, but together, they form a pattern," Sarah finished, scanning the documents. "How long?" 3 years of consistent anomalies. All authorized by my CFO, James Harrison. "And your wife's consulting firm handles your European operations?" Sarah added, connecting the dots. "That's quite a coincidence." Nathan's smile hadn't reached his eyes. "I don't believe in coincidences, Ms. Chan. Neither does the FBI." Present time. The restaurant surveillance feed showed Claire sliding another document across the table. Sarah zoomed in, capturing every page through the high-resolution cameras they'd installed weeks ago. Transfer papers are being signed, she reported. Agent Rodriguez, are your teams in position? Across the restaurant, Marcus Rodriguez adjusted his tie, the gesture serving to activate his concealed microphone. All units standing by. Let them finish their performance. Rodriguez had been tracking Claire's activities across 3 continents. Pierce Innovations wasn't her first target, but if they played this right, it would be her last. Sir, Sarah spoke into her comm. Mrs. Pierce is accessing her secure email. Should I intercept? Nathan's voice came through, calm and measured. Let it through. Time to see who else is involved in their little scheme. Sarah tracked the email's path as it bounced through servers in Dubai, Singapore, and finally to a private account in Switzerland. The encryption was sophisticated, but she prepared for this. Breaking through their security now, she murmured. These people think they're clever, but they're using a predictable pattern. Got it. The decrypted files painted a devastating picture. Photos, bank statements, corporate documents, evidence of similar takeovers spanning years. But something else caught Sarah's attention. Sir, she said urgently, I'm finding references to previous operations. Other companies, other victims, and death certificates. Too many to be coincidental. Nathan's voice remained steady. Document everything. Agent Rodriguez needs a complete paper trail. In the restaurant, Claire and James were celebrating their supposed triumph. Sarah watched James pour more champagne, his hand lingering too long on Claire's arm. Their confidence was almost pitiable. The money's moving, Sarah reported, tracking multiple transfers. They're routing it through 17 different shells companies. No, 20. All registered in the past 5 years. Rodriguez's voice cut in. Can you trace the endpoints? Better. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. I can prove Claire Pierce owns all of them. She used the same law firm to set up each company. Sloppy. Through her monitors, Sarah watched Nathan stand to leave. Right on cue, Claire and James began making their own preparations to depart. They had no idea that every cell phone tower between the restaurant and their planned meeting spot was now monitoring their communications. Target vehicles are moving, Rodriguez reported. All units maintain distance. Let's see where our happy couple goes next. Sarah switched to traffic camera feeds, tracking 3 vehicles through Seattle's rain-slicked streets. Claire's Mercedes headed downtown, while James took a more circuitous route toward the harbor. They're splitting up, she noted. Classic misdirection. Stay with Claire, Nathan instructed. James is too cautious to carry anything incriminating. She'll lead us to their documentation. The next hour was a symphony of surveillance. Claire made 3 stops, a private bank, a law office, and finally an unmarked office building near the port. At each location, Sarah's team documented every interaction, every document handled, every call made. Sir, Sarah called up financial records on her screen. I'm seeing a pattern in their previous operations. They don't just steal companies, they destroy them. Systematically drain assets, manipulate stock prices, force bankruptcies. 3 CEOs took their own lives after similar takeovers. Nathan's response was cold. And how many of those were genuine? Sarah dug deeper into Claire's travel records. Matching dates. For suspicious deaths during her business trips in the past 5 years. All ruled accidents, or they took their own lives. All involving wealthy businessmen. Now we know why she was so confident about bankruptcy not bothering me. Nathan's voice held a trace of dark amusement. She expected me to follow her previous victim's example. Rodriguez cut in. We've got movement. Claire's meeting someone at the Riverside office complex. Male, mid-50s, carrying a briefcase. Known associate of several criminal enterprises. That's Marcus Weber. Sarah identified him quickly. Professional money launderer. We've been trying to catch him for years. Through surveillance cameras, they watched Claire hand Weber a thick envelope. His laptop opened, fingers flying across keys as he began transferring funds. He's good, Sarah admitted, tracking the transactions. But I'm better. Her own programs began intercepting and documenting every keystroke, every transfer, every account number. Got you, she whispered as the final pieces fell into place. Years of financial crimes, laid bare in strings of numbers and account transfers. Meanwhile, James had reached his own destination, a private marina where a yacht waited. Sarah's facial recognition software identified 3 known criminals among the crew. Their escape plan, Rodriguez observed. Classic route to international waters, then vanish with the money. Not happening tonight. Nathan's voice came through again. Sarah, what's the total? She calculated quickly. Based on currently tracked transfers, just over $300 million. Multiple companies, multiple victims. And that's just what we can prove so far. Enough for RICO charges, Rodriguez confirmed. We've got them. The night wore on. Claire and James eventually reunited at an upscale hotel, clearly pleased with themselves. Sarah's surveillance captured their conversation in the bar. To the end of P0lice Innovations, Claire raised her glass, smirking. And its foolishly trusting founder. James clinked his glass against hers. You played him perfectly, my dear. Though I almost felt bad for him with those roses. Please, Claire rolled her eyes. He was always too sentimental. That's what made him such an easy mark. Just like the others. Speaking of others, James leaned closer. Weber confirmed the transfers are processing. By morning, Nathan won't even be able to afford a cup of coffee. Sarah switched off the audio, her disgust evident. Sir, we have enough. Multiple confessions, documented transfers, connection to previous victims. Not yet. Nathan's voice was steel. Let them finish their performance. Tomorrow, they'll try to access the company accounts. That's when they'll learn what real bankruptcy feels like. Through the night, Sarah monitored their activities while completing her final report. The evidence was damning. Years of careful manipulation, stolen fortunes, destroyed lives, and a trail of convenient deaths. Sir, she said softly, about Claire's previous husbands. I know. Nathan's response held no emotion. I've known for weeks. That's why we had to let this play out exactly as they planned. Trying to stop them too early would have just sent them underground. Dawn approached. Claire and James, confident in their victory, finally retired to their separate rooms. They'd want to maintain appearances until the takeover was complete. Sarah began compiling the final evidence package for the FBI. Financial records, surveillance footage, intercepted communications, offshore account details, everything needed to ensure that this time, Claire's victims would see justice. It's ready, she reported. Agent Rodriguez can move whenever you give the word. Nathan's response was immediate. Not yet. Let them try to access the company accounts first. I want them to feel what real helplessness is like. Sarah understood. This wasn't just about justice, it was about showing Claire and James exactly who they'd underestimated. Morning would bring Act 3, but that would be another chapter. For now, the trap was set, the evidence gathered, and the predators were about to learn what it felt like to be prey. Through her monitors, Sarah watched the hotel's darkness. In separate rooms, Claire and James slept peacefully, dreaming of their ill-gotten wealth. They had no idea that their empire of lies was about to crumble. Sleep well? Sarah murmured, sending the final evidence package to her secure server. Tomorrow's going to be a very long day. In his office, Nathan reviewed the surveillance footage one last time. Every betrayal, every smirk, every confident boast, all recorded and documented. His expression remained impassive, but his eyes held the cold satisfaction of a man who had outmaneuvered his would-be destroyers. The city lights flickered like stars through his window as he considered tomorrow's events. Claire and James thought they were masters of manipulation, experts at destroying lives for profit. They were about to learn that some people don't break when betrayed, they get even. Dawn was approaching, bringing with it the final act of this elaborate performance. But that would be another story, for another time. For now, the pieces were in place, the evidence secured, and justice waited in the wings. The night's rain had stopped, leaving Seattle's streets gleaming like black glass. In her office, Sarah Chin finally allowed herself to rest, knowing that tomorrow would bring its own challenges. The monitors continued their silent vigilance, recording every movement, every transaction, every piece of evidence that would ensure Claire and James would never destroy another life. 1 week after the restaurant meeting, dawn broke over Seattle's private airfield. Claire Pierce checked her Cartier watch, a gift Nathan had given her for their 15th anniversary. In 30 minutes, her private jet would take off for Dubai, leaving behind the ashes of Pierce Innovations. Final checks complete, Mrs. Pierce, the pilot reported. We're cleared for takeoff. Claire nodded, her designer heels clicking across the tarmac. Everything had gone perfectly. The company accounts were drained, assets transferred, and Nathan would soon be yesterday's news. Her phone buzzed. James. Minor delay accessing the last account. Systems acting strange. Claire frowned. James wasn't supposed to access anything until she was safely out of U.S. airspace. Wait for my signal, she texted back. The first sign something was wrong came when she noticed two black SUVs pulling onto the tarmac. Then another pair appeared, blocking the runway. Mrs. Pierce? Agent Rodriguez stepped out, badge glinting in the morning sun. I'm afraid your flight's been canceled. Claire's hand moved toward her purse, but a female agent was already there, removing the gun Claire thought no one knew about. Claire Pierce, Rodriguez continued, you're under arrest for fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. You have the right to remain silent. Across town, James Harrison stared at his computer screen in disbelief. Every account was locked, not just frozen, completely inaccessible. His override codes, backdoors, everything, useless. Going somewhere? Sarah Chin's voice made him spin around. FBI agents filed into his office. This is ridiculous, James blustered. I'm the CFO of Pierce Innovations. I have every right to commit fraud. Sarah held up a tablet displaying his account transfers. To assist in multiple murders? Interesting interpretation of fiduciary duty. As agents led him out, James caught sight of Nathan standing in the doorway. You knew, James realized. How long? Long enough. Nathan's voice was cold. By the way, those adjusted numbers you showed the banks? They've been very interested in the real ones. The arrests made international headlines within hours. Black Widow CEO caught in international sting. Corporate killing spree ends. Power couple faces lie. Pierce Innovations founder exposes murderous fraud scheme. At FBI headquarters, Claire sat in interrogation, her perfect composure finally cracking as Rodriguez laid out photograph after photograph. Martin Weber, your first husband, Rodriguez placed the photo. Car accident, 2015. Brake lines mysteriously failed. Claire's manicured nail tapped the table. Tragic accident. Alexander Chun, husband number 2. 2017. Apparent self-immolation except, you have nothing, Claire snapped, but her voice wavered. We have everything. Rodriguez spread out more photos. Businessmen, all dead. All connected to Claire's business trips. Your other victims' families are very interested in reopening these investigations. The death penalty is still active in several of these jurisdictions. Claire's face went ash white. 2 rooms over, James was crumbling even faster. It was all her idea, he babbled. Claire approached me 3 years ago. Said she had a system, foolproof. Target successful companies, use inside information to acquire control, drain the assets. And the deaths? Sarah Chun asked quietly. I didn't know at first. James wiped his forehead. I thought they were just financial takeovers. But then I saw patterns. Claire's business trips always seemed to coincide with accidents. How many others? At least 12 companies. But the murders? God, I don't even know the full count. The evidence was overwhelming. Sarah's team had tracked every transaction, every shell company, every offshore account. The total stolen, over $300 million. The human cost, immeasurable. 3 months later, Claire paced her prison cell, her Prada suits replaced by orange coveralls. Her carefully constructed world had shattered. Other inmates whispered about the Black Widow, the woman who killed husbands for profit. The guard found her on a Tuesday morning, unresponsive. The inquiry revealed a poison capsule, somehow smuggled in. Even in death, Claire demanded control. James received 30 years. No poison pills for him, just decades to reflect on choosing the wrong partner in crime. Nathan rebuilt Pierce Innovations, emerging stronger from the crucible of betrayal. The company's new transparency measures became industry standard. Sarah Chun, promoted to COO, helped implement systems protecting other firms from similar schemes. Occasionally, Nathan visited James in prison. Not for closure, Nathan had never needed that. He went to remind James that while some people built things of value, others only knew how to destroy. Claire's death became a cautionary tale in business schools worldwide. Students studied how ambition unchecked by ethics inevitably self-destructed. Her detailed journals, discovered after her death, revealed a sociopath's calculating mind. She'd started small in college, manipulating wealthy students for profit. Each success fed her hunger for more. The FBI created a specialized task force, using lessons from the Pierce case to identify similar long-term corporate infiltration schemes. Agent Rodriguez led the unit, with Sarah Chen consulting on financial forensics. Pierce Innovations' medical devices went on to save thousands of lives. Nathan found poetry in that how an attempt to destroy his life's work had instead made it stronger. The trick, he told young entrepreneurs at a conference, isn't just watching your business partners. It's watching their partners. Trust, but verify. Then verify again. In the end, Claire's elaborate scheme accomplished something she never intended. It created a template for protecting honest businesses from predators like herself. The roses Nathan had brought to La Maison Rouge that night were pressed between the pages of the FBI's case file. A reminder that appearances deceive, and that justice, like revenge, was best served cold. Epilogue. Years later, a reporter asked Nathan if he regretted not catching Claire sooner, before other victims suffered. "Regret is useless," he replied. "I saw a threat to everything I'd built. I eliminated it. Business is simple that way." The reporter noted he didn't sound like a man who'd lost his wife. "I lost nothing," Nathan corrected. "I removed a cancer before it could destroy what I spent my life building. The only one who lost was Claire. She just didn't know it until the end." Sarah Chun kept the surveillance recordings from that final night at La Maison Rouge. Sometimes, training new security teams, she played Claire's confident pronunciation of doom, followed by the moment she realized her own hubris had destroyed her. James Harrison served his time in solitude, abandoned by his co-conspirator's death. The only visitor he received was Nathan, whose yearly appearances served as a reminder. Some debts could never be repaid. Pierce Innovations' stock price tripled within a year of Claire's arrest. The company's new corporate governance model, designed by Sarah Chun, became known as the Pierce Protocol, a systematic defense against long-term corporate infiltration. Nathan never remarried. His company became his legacy, its life-saving innovations his answer to Claire's dedication to destruction. He kept no photos of her, no mementos of their 18 years together. But he did keep one thing: the knowledge that he'd turned her own weapon patience against her. The final page of the FBI file contained a note from Claire, written the night before her death. "Nathan didn't win because he was smarter. He won because he was willing to wait longer for revenge than I was willing to wait for victory." She was wrong, of course. Nathan hadn't waited for revenge. He'd waited for justice. And justice, unlike Claire, had infinite patience. Epilogue. A decade of consequences. 10 years had passed since the fall of Claire Pierce and James Harrison. Their stories still echoed through corporate boardrooms and law enforcement training sessions, a cautionary tale of hubris and its inevitable price. Marcus Rodriguez, now deputy director of the FBI's Corporate Crimes Division, kept a framed news article on his office wall. Black Widow CEO's empire of deception crumbles. It served as a reminder that the most dangerous predators often wore designer suits and carried platinum cards. The Pierce case changed everything, he explained to new recruits. It wasn't just about corporate fraud anymore. It showed us how patient psychopaths could weaponize legitimate business practices. The task force he created, nicknamed Operation Phoenix, after Pierce Innovations' rise from the ashes, had prevented 17 similar schemes in the past decade. Every potential Claire Pierce was now flagged by an algorithm Sarah Chun had developed, tracking patterns of corporate infiltration and suspicious deaths. James Harrison's life had taken a different trajectory. Prison had not been kind to the former CFO. His initial bravado crumbled within months, replaced by a haunted look that deepened with each passing year. Other inmates, many of whom had lost family savings to corporate fraudsters, ensured his stay was especially uncomfortable. During Nathan's annual visits, James had aged decades. His perfectly coiffed hair had gone gray, his confident smirk replaced by nervous twitches. He'd tried writing a memoir, seeking profit from his crimes, but Nathan's legal team had secured an injunction. Every cent James might ever earn would go to his victims' families. "You know what the worst part is?" James had asked during Nathan's last visit. "She never cared about me either. I found letters in her private files. She was already planning to frame me for everything. I would have been just another self-immolation in her body count." Nathan had simply watched him through the glass, neither offering comfort nor showing satisfaction. James had chosen his path, chosen to help destroy lives for profit. His regrets meant nothing. Claire's legacy proved even darker. Post-mortem psychological analysis of her journals revealed a methodical sociopath who had started manipulating and destroying lives in high school. Her college years included 3 suspicious deaths of wealthy students who'd accidentally drowned after changing their wills in her favor. The poison pill that ended her life had been her final manipulation. Investigation revealed she'd arranged its delivery through a complex network of compromised prison staff and former associates. Even her self-immolation was designed to deny others the satisfaction of justice. But her death brought forward scores of witnesses who'd feared her while she lived. The full scope of her operations emerged: 23 companies destroyed, 18 deaths ruled accidents or self-immolations, and hundreds of millions in stolen assets hidden in accounts across the globe. She was a statistical anomaly, Sarah Chin explained at a cybersecurity conference. Most corporate criminals want profit. Claire wanted destruction. The money was just her scorecard. Sarah had transformed Pierce Innovation's security division into a global consultancy. The Pierce Protocol, her corporate defense system, had become the gold standard for protecting companies against long-term infiltration. She'd recently turned down a presidential appointment to remain at Pierce Innovations, telling reporters, "Some debts can only be repaid by preventing history from repeating." Pierce Innovations itself had emerged stronger, its medical devices saving lives in hospitals worldwide. The company's transparency measures attracted ethical investors and talented employees who valued integrity over quick profits. Nathan had transformed his personal tragedy into a force for positive change, though those who knew him well recognized that transformation was fueled by cold calculation rather than altruism. The company's headquarters now included a secure room known as the Archive. Inside, Sarah maintained records of every corporate infiltration scheme they'd helped expose. Claire and James occupied the first display, their story serving as training material for corporate security teams. The fascinating thing, Sarah told her students, wasn't just the complexity of their scheme. It was how simple its prevention could have been. One person asking the right questions at the right time could have stopped them years earlier. Nathan Pierce's own evolution was perhaps the most intriguing. He'd emerged from betrayal not bitter, but more sharply focused. His annual prison visits to James weren't about closure, they were reminders to others that betrayal carried consequences. When asked about Claire, his responses were clinical, analytical. She thought she was special, he'd tell business students. She didn't realize that patient, methodical destruction could be met with patient, methodical justice. The roses from that final dinner at La Maison Rouge had been preserved by the FBI's forensics lab. They sat in a clear case in Rodriguez's office, next to Claire's self-immolation note and James's confession. Together, they told a story of trust weaponized and justice served cold. Perhaps the most lasting impact was on corporate culture itself. The Pierce effect became business terminology for the implementation of systematic protections against trust-based infiltration. Companies worldwide adopted variations of Sarah's security protocols, creating interlocking systems of verification that made long-term corporate deception increasingly difficult. The victims' families had eventually received justice, though not all found peace. Nathan had established a foundation providing support for families affected by corporate fraud, funded by recovered assets from Claire's hidden accounts. The foundation specialized in detecting signs of corporate psychopathy before it claimed lives. La Maison Rouge itself had changed hands, the new owners unaware their private dining room had hosted the beginning of Claire's end. But some of the old staff remembered, and they'd point out the table to federal agents who occasionally visited, studying the stage where justice began its patient work. James Harrison's 30-year sentence continued grinding away. He tried appealing, claiming he'd been manipulated by Claire, but the evidence Sarah had gathered proved his willing participation. His prison counselor noted he still woke screaming some nights, haunted by the faces of executives whose deaths he'd helped orchestrate. Claire's other victims emerged from shadows cast by her crimes. Support groups formed, sharing stories of manipulation and near destruction. Their testimonies helped strengthen corporate security laws, closing loopholes Claire had exploited. Her methods became red flags, studied by forensic accountants and corporate security experts. Nathan had indeed never remarried, but not from lingering attachment. Marriage is a partnership, he'd explained to a journalist. I prefer partnerships with clear performance metrics and exit clauses. His focus remained on building something lasting, something that could withstand any attempt at infiltration or destruction. P0lice Innovation's latest medical breakthrough, a neural implant helping paralyzed patients walk again, stood as testament to what could be built from the ashes of betrayal. The company's research division, now the largest in the industry, maintained one rule above all others. Trust must be earned daily, verified hourly, and never taken for granted. Sarah Chin's security algorithms continued evolving, learning from each attempt at corporate infiltration they detected. She'd created an AI system nicknamed Claire, not from sentiment, but as a reminder that the most dangerous predators could be identified by their patterns. The FBI task force expanded globally, sharing data with international agencies tracking similar schemes. They prevented billions in corporate theft, saved countless lives from destruction, and most importantly, taught businesses to recognize the warning signs of methodical infiltration. Rodriguez, approaching retirement, had trained a new generation of agents in what he called P0lice awareness, the understanding that corporate crimes weren't just about money, but about power and destruction. His team had developed psychological profiles helping identify potential Claires before they could fully implement their schemes. James Harrison's prison cell contained one personal item, a newspaper clipping about P0lice Innovation's success, not from pride in what he'd helped build, but as a reminder of what he'd tried to destroy. His prison counselor noted it represented progress from denying his crimes to acknowledging their impact. The roses in Rodriguez's office dried but never crumbled, preserved in their clear case like a museum piece. They remained as Claire remained in corporate memory, a beautiful warning of trust misplaced and justice served. Their thorns, still sharp after a decade, reminded visitors that beauty often concealed danger. Nathan Pierce's office overlooked a changed Seattle skyline. P0lice Innovation's new headquarters dominated the view, its transparent glass design a physical manifestation of the company's commitment to visibility and accountability. From his desk, he could see the harbor where Claire had planned her escape, now home to a P0lice Innovations research center. The simple truth, he told corporate security directors, is that trust is a weapon. In the right hands, it builds empires. In the wrong hands, it destroys them. The key isn't avoiding trust, it's verifying it. Continuously, methodically, patiently. 10 years after Claire's fall, her story had become more than a cautionary tale. It was a blueprint for protection, a lesson in patience, and a reminder that justice, like vengeance, was best served cold. The price of trust had been paid in full.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy the story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.